Now, to break this down further, I'm joined by Heather Roy, a political commentator and former ACT deputy leader, and Dave Cormack, a political commentator and former policy advisor to the Greens. First, can I come to you, Heather? What's your reactions to the number tonight, the numbers?
Well, this feels much more realistic than the poll 4 days ago, and I think that that most of the parties will probably agree with that, particularly the two major parties. I think it's worth bearing in mind that no party in the last 69 years, not since the 1951 election, which was very unusual because of the Watersiders strike, has got more than 50%, and I still don't think that any party will get more than 50% at this election.
Dave, does this mean that the News Hub Reid Research poll was rogue?
No, I don't think it does at all. If you look at where National went down from the last Reid Research poll, they actually dropped 5 points. And in this Colmar Brunton poll, they've actually dropped 6 points. So we're seeing a trend where they're going down in that 5-6 point range. And I think that headline number 25 to 32 can kind of bounce around depending on the day that you actually do the poll.
So obviously at the period that they were polling, this is the News Hub poll, there was a lot going on. There was Hamish Walker, Andrew Falloon, and it wasn't good for National at the time.
There hasn't been good news for National for quite a long time. I suppose this week's been good insofar as no one's resigned this week, so that could be considered a success. But I'm also told that there's actually a report coming back from Operation Burnham tomorrow, which isn't going to be good for National either. So I think there's just going to be more bad news continuing on, and I've never seen anything like it.
Heather, Judith Collins, will she be happy with that bump in her own personal rating there, 20% for preferred Prime Minister?
Oh, I think any upward trend will be very welcome, but I don't think she'll be happy with 20%. She'll be striving hard to lift that. But, you know, it's the party vote that's important, how the party does. And I think that I don't exactly agree with Dave, actually. I think that the last poll was an outlier, in my view. 1 in 20 by just reason of normal chance shows that there will be sort of quite obscure results from time to time. I think that was. And I just come back to the fact that I don't think any party in the current environment can get more than 50% at the election. So I think we can expect Labour to drop and National Party to rise. It's always interesting looking at the little parties too, the minor parties, and ACT will be a very happy camp tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So with 51 days to go, what does National's strategy have to be then, Heather?
Well, I think National's always strong on the economy, or at least there's the perception that it's stronger on the economy. So I would hope to see something a bit new and revolutionary in the economic space. I'm not sure we're going to get that. I think we'd have to rely on ACT to provide that. But I think that people will look in the current environment with COVID disruption causing all sorts of havoc. People are going to be losing jobs. Bill English came out today saying that businesses need to prepare for a long period of low productivity and low everything, really. And so I think National needs to pull something out of the bag in the economic space.
Dave, do voters pay attention to policy, or are they voting for a personality?
I think there's a bit of both, and we're seeing a real paucity of policy, unless you count National re-announcing road after road as a policy. But people respond well to the Prime Minister. They like her, and they really don't like her when she's criticised by other politicians. But at the same time, we're not being given an opportunity to judge policy. The only party that's really putting out any policy at the moment is the Greens, and they're kind of hovering in their only just safe zone. So it's really hard to ascertain if there is an appetite for it. Labour, of course, don't want to put out much policy because they're up over 50%, so why risk alienating anybody? National are kind of in dire straits and need to do something, so I'm sure there'll be a 10-lane road announced in the next few days. But we're just not getting anything.
Dave, do you actually think that is Labour's strategy?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they've basically said they're not going to give out much until much closer to the election, and why would you risk alienating some of that soft centre-right vote that's come over to your side by doing something that's left-wing? I think it's going to be a really boring home stretch from Labour.
Heather mentioned it's potentially good news for the minor parties, but as you point out, the Greens hovering around 5%. Will they be happy with that?
No, they'll probably want to get that up around 6 or 7, and we might see that if some of that soft left Labour vote feels secure enough that they can peel off and go to the Greens. But also at the same time, I'm not certain if ACT is going to be overjoyed with getting at 5%, because I think there are some concerns that the talent kind of starts to thin out at quite high number placings. So while 5 sounds good in theory, maybe they'd be more comfortable around the 2 or 3 MP mark rather than 6.
Heather, is there a lack of depth in ACT's list?
I don't know people beyond number 5 particularly well, but I think that they won't be displeased with this 5%. They'll be very happy that the hard work that they have put in, David Seymour particularly on his own for all those political periods, is finally being rewarded for that. I think the Greens will be unhappy with 5%. They traditionally poll on polling day, on election day, quite a bit less than the polls dictate. So if that's the case, they would be out of Parliament on this. And I think we shouldn't discount the Maori Party either. It's my prediction, if we're often mad to give them, but I think that we're going to end up with a 4-party parliament after the election. If there's a 5-party parliament, I think that it'll be the Maori Party will be the 5th party there, possibly with an overhang by winning 1 or 2 electorate seats.
So you're calling time on New Zealand First, Heather?
You can never count Winston out, but there is a significant trend now from the recent polls showing that they're only around 1.5 to 2%, so they're in trouble.
So, Dave, just before we go, I'll put you on the spot. Is Winston Peters and New Zealand First going to make it back in?
I think New Zealand is due some good luck, so no, I don't think they will.
Thank you both for joining us. That is Heather Roy, political commentator and former ACT Deputy Leader, and Dave Cormack, who is also a political commentator and he was a former policy advisor to the Greens. They're talking about the One News Colmar Brunton poll. And just to recap those numbers for you, National came in at 32%, Labour at 53%. Judith Collins gets 20% in the preferred Prime Minister stakes, and Jacinda Ardern remains at the 54% that she got in the last Colmar poll, which was around June 25th.